We have a massive Leafs update to go over today as Elliotte Friedman has dropped a huge report surrounding John Tavares that has fans fired up, but also dives into some insight we haven't heard yet this offseason, and things have taken a major turn on this front. We're going to break down this Friedman report, discuss what it means going forward, as well as a few other updates surrounding the Leafs as things get underway and Brad Living prepares for something big. But before we do it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, so thank you guys for that. Your support's been incredible. There's a lot to go over today, and we have a big report from Elliotte Friedman, and it's following some other signings that have happened across the NHL. And this is surrounding John Tavares. And let's dive right into it here because a lot to go over today. And you can see this here. Elliotte Friedman came out and discussed the possibility of John Tavares taking a longer-term deal with the Leafs for less money per season. He goes on to say, I'm curious to see if he ends up with a deal structured like the Tanev Yanni Gourde contract. That's what I'm wondering, if that's where it's heading. More term, less money. Instead of it being 2 years, whatever amount, or 3 years, maybe they just go the route they did last year with Chris Tanev, and now Tanev just did it with Gourde. I can't help but wonder if that's the kind of structure Tavares' next contract will follow. And of course, we think back to Brock Nelson a couple days ago. He signed that 3-year deal at $7.5 million AAV, an absurd amount of money for him. But I guess it makes sense for the, of course, the Avalanche going for the Cup. This is interesting now because this would be a Chris Tanev deal that, now I don't think Tavares is ever going to go to Robidas Island, but at the same time, they're probably going to stretch this contract out, according to Freeman, for some years here. And things have taken a bit of a turn in the situation. I don't actually mind it whatsoever. I think it makes some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's very interesting because a lot of people right now are talking about Brad Treliving's comments and changing the DNA. And does that include John Tavares? And I've thought about that recently too. And I'm not married to the fact of bringing John Tavares back. I'll say that. And listen, I love John Tavares, Portuguese guy, right? Have his jersey behind me. Love John Tavares. And I think he can help the team. And we'll dissect it in this video. But I'm not married to the fact of having him back if they can upgrade the team. But that being said, like you said, if you look around the league, Brock Nelson, who's a better player, John Tavares or Brock Nelson? I'll tell you, I take John Tavares in that scenario, and Brock Nelson just got $7.5 million. So for people saying that John Tavares isn't worth more than that, if he goes to the open market, he's going to make $8 or $9 million on another team. They're going to give him that money because he is that good. Now, with the Toronto Maple Leafs, we covered a report a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, I guess, that, he would be open to signing a very team-friendly deal, like $5 million, right? If you can get John Tavares on that money as your third-line center moving forward into the future for a couple of years, I think you do that. You brought up Robidas Island as well. I would hate to see Tavares' career end like that, but at the same time, he's only 34 years old, right? And I say only because he's still putting up 40 goals a year. So he can still be a great player at that dollar amount. And the other thing is, when talking about changing the DNA, I feel like when you look at the core of this team that looks like they're about to be disbanded, guys like Nylander, not even really Nylander, but a little bit to a degree, especially Marner and Matthews, have squeezed this team for every dollar possible. When you look at a guy like John Tavares, yes, he's part of that core and hasn't gotten it done. He took less to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, and I think he's going to want to do it again. I think he wants to play in Toronto. He wants to retire a Maple Leaf, and he wants to try and win a Stanley Cup as a Toronto Maple Leaf. And I think that fans can kind of get behind that. So we'll see what ends up happening, but I think it could end up being some deferred salary for sure, like a new contract structure that we saw with even Carolina last offseason. A lot of teams are starting to do that where, maybe he does end up on Robidas Island, which would suck to see the end of his career end like that. But at the same time, if it helps the team, I think I'm for it because, if he takes less, he's still a great player.
Yeah, and this would, of course, open the Leafs up to a lot of options as pertains to cap space and all these different things. The cap is continuing to go up. And you can see here again, he basically just said a deal similar to the Chris Tanev Yanni Gourde. Now, maybe this seems, if he hit the open market and he wanted a 2-3 year deal, he could easily get, I think, 7, 8, maybe even 9 million if it's a 2-year deal. And for the Toronto Maple Leafs, would that be worth it? Absolutely not. I mean, paying John Tavares, even paying him above 7 million would be just not worth it given what the team needs. But if you're paying him over 5, 4, 6, however many years, and you're paying him a lot less money, now the number 3, 4, 5 million, whatever it ends up being, we know that Tavares wants to, stay at Toronto Maple Leaf and get a team-friendly deal, I guess, or Brad Living doesn't want that to happen. It's going to be interesting to see how much they actually are willing to pay him in a structure like this. Now, if it's something like 6 years, $3 million, which gives him a total of $18 million, which would be the same as the 2-year, $9 million amount he gets, something like that. I mean, that would be good. Obviously, $3 million a year is a steal for Tavares. But again, you're paying him into the future. I don't think the Leafs are worrying about that right now. We saw that with Chris Tanev's contract, even OEL's to a degree. 4 years, he'll be valuable. But the way that this is ending up going, it's going to be very interesting. And he had 38 goals in the regular season and 5 goals in the playoffs. That's the second most in the team in both instances. Whatever DNA problem the Leafs have, it has nothing to do with Tavares. People don't want him back. Need better analysis. I think as a hockey player, he definitely should, and not necessarily needs to, but very positive. He's a benefit to this team, including the playoffs. But it's all about the money. And I'll ask you this, and there's been some rumors about it, the amount and the years and the actual numbers surrounding a Tanev type contract. Of course, Tanev's looking at more than $3 million, around 5. So it would be interesting there. I don't know how I feel about even like a 5-year, $5 million deal. That still seems like a little bit of a long contract for him. But I could also see him, wanting to stay here for the next 5 years and maybe being a fourth liner for the tail half of that contract.
And he's a great player. Again, at 34, he's still putting up 40 goals. So what's he going to be like at 38? He still could be a useful player as a third line center, right? And obviously, as the salary cap goes up, the contract will look better. If you have more years on it, the AAV comes down, right? So I think it could be a good idea. And if he ends up on Robot Island, I guess it is what it is. Again, I wouldn't like to see his career end like that, but whatever helps the team, right? And if he wants to stay and try and win a Stanley Cup, then that's what's going to happen. So it would have to be a lower dollar amount. I mean, Yanni Gourde's contract is insane for Tampa Bay, right? Like the value they're getting out of that is absolutely bonkers. So, if they can mimic something with Tavares like that where it helps the team, Tavares is still happy. He's still going to make a lot of money, right? And then maybe he doesn't even finish the contract. I feel like that could be something that's really good for both parties, right? Because it's got to make sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs for him to return. It really does. If it doesn't make sense, then he's not going to be returning. They're not going to re-sign him. But to talk about the DNA thing a little bit more, it's not that, Tavares should be excluded from the failure or anything like that. He's included in that, right? Like, obviously, he's part of the team. Everybody should be included. But when you look at the way that everything has happened, Brendan Shanahan, whenever there was a fork in the road decision to be made, I feel like Shanahan chose the wrong way every single time. Like the captaincy thing, we know what happened back then, but I feel like Matthews probably should have been given the captaincy earlier. But the fact that Tavares was given the captaincy, that's great. He was leading the team, all of that. They didn't get the job done. But I think a lot of this and the failure has to do with the fact that they didn't bring in champions or guys who knew how to win. They brought in guys like Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton to mentor guys like Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews. And those are not the right guys to mentor younger players like that, right? So I feel like a lot of that has to do with that. Again, it's not that Tavares should be excluded from the failures or anything like that. But when you talk about DNA, Tavares wants to be here. I feel like he will take less money to be here. And his goal before he retires is to win a Stanley Cup as a Toronto Maple Leaf. That's what he wants to do. And he scored some big goals here too. I would like him to come back. Keep in mind, again, I'm going to be enjoying the comments, that's for sure. But keep in mind, I am biased, right? I love John Tavares. I want him to stay. And I think that he can help this team win with a lesser role. And the only way that makes sense is if he takes less on some deferred money, as we've been talking about.
Yeah, Yanni Gourde, for reference, in case you guys miss it, 6 years, $14 million, so a $2.33 million cap hit.
Crazy.
I don't think John Tavares is going to take that little, because that total amount is $14 million, which I think is under what John Tavares is worth. And John Tavares is a significantly better player, at least to me, than Yanni Gourde is, at least for the next couple of years. But again, who knows? Maybe with John Tavares, he could, the pessimistic side of it, could fall off a cliff a little bit here and go back to what he was like the year before a little bit and things like that. But regardless, he wants to stay in Toronto. I'm gonna, guess a 5-year deal, between $3 and $4 million a year. I think that would be something that makes a lot of sense here, according to what Friedman's saying. I don't know if it's gonna be quite as much of a discount as Yanni Gourde gave the Tampa Bay Lightning, but also I think it's gonna be a bit cheaper maybe than Chris Tanev's contract given the situation. But let me know down below what your thoughts are. Everybody wants him back. It's just a matter of the price, and it seems like one of those things that are inevitable, but also is kind of distracted because of the Mitch Marner situation. And again, reports have come out here. John Tavares could 100% get more money on the open market, but a deal with the Leafs is expected to get done as long as neither side is unreasonable. Tavares can ask for 8. The Leafs can offer 1. You go in the middle, $3 to $4 million over 6, 7 years, something crazy like that. We'll get the deal done. But let us know down below your thoughts. So thank you guys for watching. See you later.